Spoilers and offensive content to come.
We are Carlos and Anime. We are the best anime review show on the internet. And today we are going to review Season 1, the only season?
Probably the only season.
Maybe not. I have a theory about that. Of The Magical Revolution of the Reincarnated Princess and the Genius Young Lady. The Japanese title, a much better title of Tenten Kakumei. I don't know why these titles are so long. Oh, god damn it. This is a show that is technically an isekai, very loosely, almost barely, to the point it's only really kind of confirmed in the very last episode. And even then, it's a stretch because we don't know if she's just remembering things that aren't hers or she did come from the real world. But that's not the important part. The important part about this show is that I've been thinking about it this entire last week after we finished it, and I still don't know how I feel. Because this is actually a good show. This is a great show, and if we can count it as an isekai, by far better than the rest of the schlock you usually show me. But I'm very torn about how it ends. But, you know what?
We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. Dave, what did you think of The Magical Revolution of the Reincarnated Princess and the Genius Young Lady?
Much like you, I really did enjoy what we got.
The magical reincarnation of the Magical Revolution.
We are not wasting time saying this show's title again and again.
I'm going to say it every single time I refer to it.
Don't. No, I thought this was a very well thought out and well done show. I mean,
you didn't hear any of this, folks, because I cut it out, but David nearly choked on his own spit just talking about the show. That's how much he wants to discuss it.
No, I very much liked the premise of it. The fact that we have a non-magical girl trying to work her way through a magic society, that she's trying to improve her society for the better by bringing magic tools to the populace. The background of, she's royalty, but she gave up the throne so that her brother wouldn't have any competition for the throne and people wouldn't see them as competing. But yet that put them at odds because he may not have actually wanted the throne or wanted her to give up. The fact that Euphilia...
Yuffie.
Oh, yeah. I'll go Yuffie instead.
Because they call each other Anis and Yuffie. Yeah. They don't go by their full names.
Fair enough. The fact that Anis basically saved Yuffie and tried to help her get past being dumped by her brother and the whole... I really enjoyed the fact that Lainey was part and parcel of the plans, but she was being used without knowing it. And everything else, like the whole vampire thing she had going. I think a succubus would have worked better for the situation, honestly, but whatever. But this was a very well thought out show.
That's really what it was. It was well thought out. Like, unlike a lot of shows like this that have these long titles and that are isekais, and again, this is just barely one.
Barely.
Just barely. It seems that someone sat down and thought about the trials and tribulations each of these characters would face and how they relate to each other in a very thoughtful way, which is refreshing for once in this genre. What really struck me about this show is that the first 8 to 9 episodes are this fun romp of two girls on wacky hijinks, basically, with Anis being the wacky hijinks causer and Yuffie being the quote-unquote straight man who is caught along with the hijinks. And it was supposed to be just a kind of a Yuri baiting fun thing where girls go on wacky adventures and have misadventures, for example.
Yes.
And then the last few episodes tonal shifted in a complete 180. And suddenly we have a lot of Anis being broken down to her core components and just a character study of all her insecurities and all her problems that she's facing now, having been forced to take the throne again, and how it's basically tearing her apart inside. And the thematic reversal of now Yuffie is the one who has to save Anis from this. Yeah. And there was a lot of crying in the last episodes. It was actually kind of hard to watch. When the show was done, I felt like a boot was lifted off my chest. The last time I felt that, and these shows don't really compare, but the last time I felt this was at the end of the Chimera Ant arc from Hunter x Hunter. That's how hard it was. But it was actually, like, it wasn't the show it started as, but it was still really good. Like, Algard you thought was just going to be the schemer, but he ended up having very good reasons for what he was doing. Yeah. His love for his sister actually was very strong, and so was hers for him. They should have talked this out a long time ago. They've suddenly all this depth of character in the last few episodes, all this kind of, like, it was heavy on the exposition, but it was good exposition. Mm-hmm. It was just this, we were almost like trying to break these happy people with the circumstances, the weight of the nobility's desire. And like, there's one scene where Anis, after meeting with the disgusting-ass nobility, who just casually talk about how she can breed a serviceable heir, and it doesn't have to be a young consort that she has. She goes to the bathroom and fucking vomits. And then looks at herself in the mirror, begging herself to be okay. And there's another scene where Algard is just lying on the ground crying, and he's like, "It hurts when you can't be who you want to be." And I'm like, what the fuck is this show doing, tugging at my heart like this all of a sudden? Yeah. This was supposed to be a fun show. And then the Yuri baiting gets twisted on its head, because at the very end, after like Yuffie takes on the mantle of queen and takes on the immortality to free Anis from the responsibility, she shares a tender moment and kisses Anis. And I'm like, are you kidding? This got the Yuri kiss, the canon Yuri kiss that's been building up all season? But Yuki Yuna didn't get this. Flip Flappers didn't get this. And the girls admitted they loved each other in that show. But this fun little show that was nothing but just kind of a guilty pleasure suddenly went in that direction. And I think the issue lies in that. I don't mind tonal shifts in shows that work, and certainly the show arguably became better for it. But it also meant that Anis kind of suffered a bit of character regression. Arguably necessary regression, because again, the thematic flip is that now Yuffie has to save her, and I appreciate that. But it was like seeing Anis being so confident for 9 episodes, and then just being like this like blubbering mess, understandably, in the last several. It was hard, and I didn't like seeing it, but I get it, but I'm also conflicted. I remember when Angry Joe reviewed Ashura's Wrath, and he gave it a 6 out of 10. Mm-hmm. But he still gave it his badass seal of approval. Yeah. And the reason he did is because it's a flawed game. It tries to nickel and dime you for chapters. Yep. And it's ultimately just like watching an anime with a few cutscenes. But he loved the shit out of it anyway, and he can't deny how badass it was. I kind of think the reverse of that. This is actually a super good show. This is an 8.5 out of 3 pi easy. But I have to put a caveat that your mileage may vary wildly depending on how much the tonal shift punches you in the mouth. It punched me in the mouth for sure.
Much like you at first, I was conflicted. I've since gone back and watched the last 5 episodes again.
How could you stand it? I had to not think about this show even though I couldn't not. Sorry. Please tell me.
I had to.
Okay.
And
it was a demon you had to exercise? I'm sorry, I swear to God.
It's okay. I don't mind at all, because it's part of our thing. Okay, the tonal shift, absolutely. It's heart-wrenching, and holy fuck, your neck kind of does a 180, like, what the where?
I was watching a happy show, and now I'm sad, and I'm angry about it.
But after rewatching it, I no longer think that how she was in those last 3 episodes was outside of her character.
No, I don't think it's out of character at all. I just want to... sorry, I'll let you finish, but I'm not saying she was out of character. I'm saying it was a bit of regression, and that I'm conflicted by it because I don't know if it really is regression. It's not out of character. It's just, it sucked to see her that.
Do not get me wrong. It sucked to see him the second time around. Didn't make it any easier. But I kind of disagree with the regression part.
Okay.
Because here we have light-hearted Annis, who has been doing her whole thing trying to better everybody. And now she's had to defeat her brother. Her brother's been sent off to the edge of nowhere. Now all the royal issues are on her shoulders. And like during this whole period, she never gave up being royalty. Like as she says multiple times in those last episodes, can I still be the princess? Being the princess is still a very big part of what makes her her. Yes, she wanted to give up not the royalty part, the becoming the next queen.
The responsibilities
of that, because she didn't want to be in her brother's way. But her brother's not a part of anything anymore. So all of those responsibilities are now on her shoulders, and she, by God, is going to shoulder them. Whether it means becoming a consort to some old man or whatever else, she's got to continue the family line. She's got to meet all those expectations that she has given up and set aside for a number of years now. Now she understands what her brother was going through that.
You've convinced me. You're right. It wasn't a regression. You've convinced me with that whole thing, because you're right. She, in a way, it's her showing her continued strength, and it just made her really sad to do. You're right. I concede the point.
Yeah, and I remember you using regression last time we had talked about it, and it kind of stuck with me, which is why I watched it again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a downer. I can't argue that. Fuck, is it a downer there? Even like Yuffie taking on the immortality and everything else. But yeah, like Annis would have gone through with everything, and would have put up with the nobility, and it would have in the end destroyed her. Like where we're talking, upon her becoming queen, I give her months until she's in her room locked away from everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because she would just be a body for the nobility to use.
Yep.
And I'm very glad that Yuffie stepped up and took on that responsibility. But, I mean, this is where a second season...
And I'll talk about that in a moment.
...could lead into things. Because, the original spirit user...
Yeah, I don't remember her name.
It doesn't matter.
She came in at the 11th hour anyway. So.
Yeah. I mean, as she explained, I took her whole story about her becoming distant from her husband and everything else, losing touch with her emotions and everything else. I took that as literally her not being able to express emotion anymore and everything else. That obviously was not the case, because she was showing emotion there with them. She was trying to convince them not to do what she did, but that Yuffie had the option in this case.
Which Yuffie took, because by that point, Yuffie has already fallen in love with Annis.
Yes.
She openly admits that to her father, and she, by God damn it, she was gonna fucking get Annis out of her funk if it killed her. Or made her immortal, as it were.
And I mean, as like even the last couple scenes are, where Yuffie's talking to Annis and being like, Annis is talking about researching immortality.
Yeah.
Of some sort. I don't put that past Annis' ability with the whole, like, I actually think Annis is already immortal.
I have to explain a few things to you. And this is spoiler territory. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a light novel, and it's still going.
Okay.
Okay. It's also a manga, And to give you an idea of how maybe the show kind of rushed it a little bit,
Okay.
the manga, I think, on certain sites is at 60-something.
Greetings, folks. Carlos here. I actually meant to say 30-something, not 60-something. Back to the review.
And they are only at the part where they're being distracted in the palace while Algard attacks the villa.
Whoa.
And I haven't read through the manga yet, but I've gone through some chapters and I've definitely seen some stuff that wasn't in the show. So we definitely got a lot of content in the show, even though it didn't feel too rushed. I didn't read ahead in the light novels, but I did see a Wikipedia article.
Okay.
And the Wikipedia article mentioned a few things that happen after this point of the story that are very interesting. 2 things specifically are very interesting.
Okay, go ahead.
The first is that whenever Yuffie kisses Anis,
Yeah.
she's actually, and I think it might be inadvertently, drawing mana from her to keep her own self alive because she needs to now as an immortal.
Oh.
The second, do you remember that dragon's curse?
Yep.
That curse is slowly turning Anis into a dragon.
Oh.
I don't know the particulars of that. If that means this is like an Akatsuki no Yona situation where she's got some dragon scales under her clothes now, I don't know. But those are the 2 details that I gleaned from that, and I'm like, oh, this story ain't done.
No, obviously not.
Now, and that means I had a bunch of theories of what a season 2 could do. I was going to say, like, maybe there could be a new main character in the Outer Rim, and Algard gets involved in some quest with them that ends up taking him to save the kingdom, and that leads back to these 2, which, I mean, still could happen. Like, that's not outside the realm of possibility. The story's still not done. And just hearing those 2 tidbits by themselves makes me kind of want to see a season 2 of this. Or at the very least, keep following this manga, because I don't want to read no light novels. I'm not light novel guy. I don't care for them.
I might have to.
I might if the manga doesn't continue, because I need to know now.
Now, the light novel / series I was talking about that, has kind of a reference to what Anis's character is like, comes from a light novel / show called Ascendance of a Bookworm.
It was Ascendance. I thought it was.
I thought it was too,
remember.
but I didn't want to give the wrong title.
Yeah.
Only because the only real similarity is that each character has knowledge from quote-unquote the real world that they're trying to introduce into the world that they're now in.
Kind of like Release That Witch, which one day we're going to have to talk about.
Yes. But no, I mean, this show was good.
It was very good.
The tonal shift was total whiplash-inducing. Absolutely.
And again, I want to stress, even though the total shift was a shock, what came after was some actually really good storytelling.
Yeah. My one nitpick is that they kind of left the whole revolution to a footnote in the last couple minutes of the last anime.
Not just that, it's kind of like how the fact that this is technically an isekai was a footnote too, because we see some flashbacks to the real world memories Anis has in the beginning, and then in the very last episode she confesses to Yuffie that she has memories of another world, and she isn't sure if she lived there, or her memories just supplanted, or if she's even really Anis, and this was causing her some schism.
Yes.
So it might not even technically be an isekai if she just had some memories put in her, and it might technically be one if she really was in the real world.
But it doesn't
It's just
matter.
the weird loosest reference is just so strange.
Yeah, it's...
That these things are footnotes.
Yeah.
That'd be like learning that at the end of Return of the Jedi, Luke Skywalker was actually Frankie Jackson from Connecticut, and that he got taken to a galaxy far, far away a long time ago.
Yeah.
Like, we can discuss some... We talked about Anis and Yuffie a lot. With strong characters, good development on both of them.
Yeah.
Anis, I didn't think was going to get much development, but she got a ton, especially near the end. And Yuffie just ended up falling in love with her, and that informed a lot of her character, too, and coming into her own. Algard was a big surprise, and we talked about him, too. Sorry.
It was nice to see that Yuffie went from being the shy wallflower to coming into her own, taking control of her own destiny. And by God, she was going to have Anis.
Yes. Even if it meant blowing her up.
Oh, that was good too. The whole duel between them. It just...
Yeah, man. And it's just like, how do I compete against this? She got Ultima. Like,
Exactly.
there aren't too many people who can take an Ultima. As far as I know, I can. A lot of Final Fantasy characters can. And I think you can with certain buffs.
Pretty much. But yeah, no, Annis with her whole Magitech was a cool idea. I loved it.
I wish that was explored more, though.
So do I, because...
Again, Release That Witch spoiled me a little bit, because we got to see... Oh, I can't believe this is his name still. Roland Wimbledon have that effect on that world. And I would love to see more of that in another season, if one even happens.
Well, a magic gun.
I love magic guns.
I'm surprised that she didn't have a magic gun.
She kind of had a lightsaber, though.
She did.
She had 2 lightsabers.
I know.
And they were better than lightsabers. Like, she could touch the blade.
Yeah.
She could... Okay, maybe they weren't strictly better, but still.
Yeah.
They're still really good.
But, I mean, our support cast.
Yes.
Ilya.
Ilya's...
The maid.
She was like a big sister character.
She was very... Big sister character. She was also her protector / bodyguard.
Oh, yeah, no,
she didn't realize it.
And she was... Because you get this implication, and I don't know if the manga explores this more. I'll let you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ilya even mentions in the show that Annis basically treated her like a person, and that kind of endeared Ilya to her, right?
Yeah.
And that's why she's like, no, I'm loyal to her now.
Because she was treated like shit by her last master.
Yeah, they did mention that in the show. You're right.
And then you have Lainey.
Now, Lainey was interesting because I thought she was just going to be a background character.
Yeah.
Then it turns out she actually has some vampire powers and was part of Algard's plan to become a vampire himself.
Yep.
Had the first kiss of the show, not even expected, with Ilya, although it was a share blood kiss. The fact that she gripped her closer after definitely had some implications.
Well, and by the end of the season 1, I'm pretty sure the two of them are a couple.
Maybe. They might be. I don't think anything was overtly said, like with Annis and Yuffie, who definitely are a couple now.
Yeah. I got the impression that... I mean, I mentioned while we were watching it that I thought that Lainey kind of took a demotion. Because, she went from being the potential fiancé of Elgard to working as Annis's maid. And I know that they said that she was a commoner that had been adopted by nobility, but again, she was still part of nobility at that point. So wouldn't it be a massive demotion to come work for Annis? Like, I don't get how... I wish they'd explained a little bit more about how that happened, other than loyalty.
I think from an outside observer, namely us, it definitely seems like a demotion. From Lainey's perspective, she's probably very happy with it. And I think that's what matters in the end.
I mean, ultimately, she is one of the queen's maids at that point.
And if she is developing feelings for Ilya, then she is exactly where she wants to be.
Oh, and I love the fact that she was being trained by Ilya. It just seemed the two of them were a little bit closer than just a maid and her assistant.
Well, they did share a vampire blood kiss.
Well,
when you share a vampire blood kiss with someone, you feel things.
Ilya seemed to like it.
Is that the men in us talking, or is that the actual scene?
With full consent, she seemed to enjoy helping Lainey out.
I enjoyed helping her out in this erotic way.
And then we have Tilty.
Tilty was just kind of a secondary character. There was nothing terribly upsetting about her. You definitely get the impression that, like with Ilya, she was accepted by Annis when a lot of people didn't accept her, right? So I get why Tilty's like another big sister figure in a way. But she definitely served the role she needed to, which is to push people exactly where they need to be. She's super observant. She told Yuffie, what is it you want out of Annis? And you better be honest about it.
Yeah.
And she said the same thing to Annis, right? She's that observant. She didn't realize it. For someone who dresses like she was, she's definitely the Cupid of the group. She is the matchmaker, really.
But I also found it interesting that so many people around Annis were the misfits of the kingdom. But it's also interesting that the kingdom had so many misfits that couldn't control their powers and everything else. maybe showing that magic was kind of not the way that they needed to go anyway. Because even from like a societal role, I mean, it was almost like the magic was becoming almost a poison to them.
I mean, this is a world that's being choked out by backwards ass nobility. And unlike in Release That Witch, where Roland Wimbledon got reincarnated as a noble in that world and could directly, and with the power of the witches he freed, challenge that.
Yeah.
Anis is one person, Yuffie is another person, and the nobility seemingly has power and influence and forces. So they can't just make that change immediately. They're doing the right thing ultimately, which is showing the power to the people and winning the people's hearts to their side, so that when the nobility does make their play, the people side with Anis and Yuffie.
Well, and with the nobility being as traditionally minded as they were always pushing, the fact that Yuffie took on the second spirit bearer role. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't argue against the spirit bearer who is the second coming, basically.
Yeah, in this world, that makes her Jesus.
Yeah.
And you could argue, here's the thing though, if Jesus, honest to goodness, resurrected in our world and started preaching to power, we'd kill him. So you know the nobility wants to make a move against Yuffie.
But
you know they do.
But Yuffie's so powerful now, it's not going to work.
I'm pretty sure she can't take a whole army by herself. And here's the other thing, too, which sucks, is that assassins are a thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think she's, like, invincible immortal. I think she just doesn't age. I don't think she's, like, she's not Zamasu. Like,
very possible.
Algard was a standout character because he ended up having so much depth to him.
Yeah.
We get it in just a handful of episodes, but we do get it nonetheless. I hope if there is more, we haven't seen the last of him, because I do think that this is a man who needs a redemption arc, man.
The sad thing is that a lot of this could have just been resolved if the two had just talked to each other.
If Anis and Algard talked even once, every problem could have been avoided. Mm-hmm. But then I guess we wouldn't have had a show either, would we?
Well, that's just it. As Queen, Yuffie could probably bring Algard back, and probably in some way they probably should, because you're right, he does kind of deserve a redemption arc.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is why I was thinking that, you know, there could be a story on the outer fringes of society where some new character ends up teaming up with Algard to face some threat that takes them back. And that would be, if Algard ends up saving the kingdom from a threat from an external threat, then that's an easy, you know, like, forgive his sentence. Commute a sentence. He has served the kingdom, and he can now be allowed to rejoin it, right? Yeah. Maybe he doesn't want to. Maybe after that he wants to stay out there and protect from the threats from without, you know? But that's just an idea I have. I haven't read anything to that effect. No, so that's just an idea. Maybe someone who is more familiar with this fiction can let us know what might happen with Algard. I hope he does. I hope we see him again, if there's even a second season. I have no idea if we're going to see a second season of this, but even if we don't, I'm going to keep up with the story anyway. Well,
and, you know, we kind of have to remember that a lot of animes are there to get people to read the mangas and the light novels and everything else.
Yep.
I may not like it, but when we get a complete series, we're lucky.
Yeah, we got a complete series that was animated well, that had some actually cool animation, and that had a lot of heart and depth and great dialogue and exposition and world building.
Yep.
I can't even fault it. This has been one of the highlights for me, and I was expecting it just to be some fluff. So, yeah, good job. Magical Revolution of the Reincarnated Princess and Genius Young Lady. Season 1. Folks, what did you think of the Magical Revolution of the Reincarnated Princess and the Genius Young Lady? If you want to tell us your thoughts on the Magical Revolution of the Reincarnated Princess and the Genius Young Lady, including any thoughts you might have about other versions of the Magical Revolution of the Reincarnated Princess and Genius Young Lady, let us know in a comment on this video. Go to Anime Rave, because I hope the Anime Rave, that's the Reincarnated Princess Genius Young Lady.
Tune in next time, everyone.